Orale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin, and we are going to Motown for the NFL Insider Series. Familia, Detroit Lions, Detroit Rock City. It is just, we're jamming. We're jamming through these, going 32 for 32 on these NFL Insiders. And first off, before we jump into our amigo, make sure you're following Familia FFB on YouTube. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, keep our numbers growing. I want to see that. I want to see us. Last year we doubled our numbers. This year I want to see the numbers double again. Por favor, let's get this going because this is the great kind of information that we're going to fill this little lull in the NFL calendar to get you guys ready for your fantasy drafts. So, Familia. We're going 4 for 4 with our next invitado, Mike Payton, coming to us from A to Z Sports. And, this is the 4th year in a row that he's done this. And he's just always filled us up with so much great actionable information for the fantasy sports aficionados. And also make sure you're checking out his Bad Boys podcast that I'm going to let him kind of intro a little bit right there. So let's get this going. Bienvenido, Mike Payton. Welcome, mi amigo.
Yeah, happy to be here, man. Always love doing this show with you, and I'm looking forward to football coming back as soon as possible.
And you know what? And fantasy managers are really looking forward to this offense coming back. I mean, last year I remember when we did this episode, we were really hyped up about this offense, but we didn't know about the tight end. We didn't know about the rookie running back. Well, we found out by the end of the season. So this was one of the most high-powered offenses in the NFL. Ben Johnson is coming back, as to many people's surprise. Thankfully for fantasy managers, he waited to become a NFL head coach for another season. But it all starts with Jared Goff, and he got paid this year. Got paid like one of the top starters, and he was one of the 4,500 over 4,500 passing yards last year, 30 touchdowns. This was the offense that scored third in points in the NFL last season. Mi amigo, and also he's 14 of 17 games are either at home or under a roof this year. How pumped should fantasy managers be for what Jared Goff has this year?
Yeah, I mean, you said it in that last little bit there with only one potential inclement weather game, and that's coming near the end of the season against Chicago. Everything else is inside or in sunny California, or it's what a benefit for the Lions to have this schedule for an offense that plays so well on turf and inside a building. So Jared is definitely going to be able to take advantage of that. I know he's kind of struggled in colder games in the past and did last year as well. So yeah, if you're looking to draft him fantasy wise, I mean, this is a guy that was second in passing yards last year, 5th in touchdowns. He's not that Jared Goff from 2020 anymore. Like, that's just, that guy's dead. This guy is putting up numbers, and I had him on my team last year, fantasy wise. I made it to the Super Bowl and lost again in the Super Bowl. Tough loss. But he definitely is somebody I would look to draft for sure. I would definitely look to get him again with the potential rise of Jameson Williams this year. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is only getting better. Plus, you mentioned those running back with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. There's so much offensive firepower. Sam LaPorta as well. And then the offensive line, believe it or not, had another upgrade this year with Kevin Zeitler, who was an upgrade over the Jonah Jackson, who's now with the Rams. So Jared is going to be well protected, and he's going to have all the weapons that he can handle for the most part. He's definitely going to be earning that money.
So let's jump into the passing game first. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is just. He is a wide receiver one. He's going in first round of fantasy drafts in underdog best ball drafts. Just one of the best receivers in the game. Almost 120 receptions last year, over 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns last year. He also got paid as one of the top receivers in the game. So he's being recognized as one of the top receivers in the game. I mean, can we just like almost write him in for, 115 to 125 catches and 1,500? I mean, basically the same numbers that he had last year in this high powered scheme where he is the number one weapon.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair. Like, he is a sure-handed catch almost every time you throw the ball his way. Plus, he has yards after the catch ability that is just fun to watch. So with the rest of the receiving core, Jameson Williams is expected to be a bigger part of the receiving core this year. But after that, there's Donovan Peoples-Jones, there's Khalif Raymond and Antoine Green, and those guys at this point, they have some work to do before we can say that they're going to be, prime time people that are coming in to help out. So, the Lions may look to add a receiver during training camp. Brad Holmes has already talked about the potential of that happening. So right now, it's hard to see Amon-Ra St. Brown getting any lower in targets. I think he might even have more targets and more catches and more receptions or yards rather than he did last year. So especially with just the depth issues at receiver after they lost Josh Reynolds to the Broncos. So yeah, I would definitely be looking to take him in the first round without question. I think he's clearly one of the best receivers in the league. Was all pro last year. He's probably going to do it again next year. Very much looking forward to seeing what he can do.
Yeah, one of the most consistent players in the NFL. I think he had a streak going. I think it was like that week 12 or 13. He had either a touchdown or 100 yards receiving in a game. So he was a metronome. He could just fill up a stat score. And you mentioned LaPorta, and I figured out between LaPorta's yards and St. Brown's yards, they were over half of what Jared Goff threw. And the 20 touchdowns, they were 2/3 of the 30 touchdowns that he threw last year. So, I mean, this is as concentrated a group as it gets. So and LaPorta had one of the best rookie tight end seasons. The second year is supposed to be a year of growth for tight ends. Where can he get better? Can he possibly get better? Because he has to get better because he's being drafted as the number one tight end in early fantasy drafts.
I think there's always a chance of a sophomore slump. What Sam did was so unnormal. Like, it's
right.
tight ends do not do that. More often than not, they're not having seasons like that. That's why it was one of the best tight end rookie seasons of all time. Like, it was just, he was approaching, records and stuff. This year, there could be a little bit of a slide. It could go back down, but at the same time, the guy has a tremendous work ethic. And Jared Goff has demonstrated throughout his time in Detroit that he really loves to target the wide receivers, and Ben Johnson likes to use them a lot. Jared Goff loved TJ Hawkinson, threw to him probably more than anybody before the trade went down. And then, obviously LaPorta comes in last year and they form an instant chemistry during OTAs and minicamp and then training camp. And then, he has an explosive season. So I don't think that Jared's going to start going away from him. But, there are still learning curves. He's still a very young player. If he can get even better, then, that would be incredible. But I would look for a season that's sort of similar to what he did this past year, maybe a little bit less. And that's still just fine. That's still really good.
Yeah, it's almost hard to expect the tight end to get 10 touchdowns again. Rookie, a sophomore, 5-year vet, anything like that, because it's, that, but you're right. You pointed out what the big thing that he loved to throw TJ Hawkinson. He threw LaPorta. This really looks like a very concentrated group. But you mentioned this guy, and this is the guy that I know you all were asking a lot about during OTAs and minicamp, Jameson Williams. He's had his stop and start an NFL, as you can imagine, to an NFL career, coming off an ACL, which took out a good chunk of his rookie season. And then last year, he ended up missing a few games at the beginning of the season with a suspension. Also had dealt with a hamstring injury during training camp. this is a normal off season for him. And how important is this off season for him? And can we see him be that third option in this passing attack?
Yeah, I mean, he so far is.
Just lost you there for a second.
Oh, yeah, somehow I got muted. Okay. Sorry about that. Dan Cable came out in one of his early pressers this spring and said that Jameson Williams was the most improved player that he had seen throughout the OTAs minicamp. Obviously we still got to wait till everybody gets in pads and there's still a lot to be seen, but so far, I mean, he's really fit the bill of the most improved. Like he's started to show up, is tracking the ball in the air a lot better than he had been in the past. I think if you watched him play in the last couple of years, every time Jared Goff will throw a deep shot to him, he's doing this the whole time while he's running, and he's slowing down and trying to track the ball, and he was having a lot of trouble with that. So far, he's looked a lot better at that. There's still some drops here and there, and there's still some things that he needs to work on, but I think he absolutely can be a number 2 or number 3 receiver for this team, and I think they look to certainly use him in that way. I think the preseason is going to be really telling. I think he'll be one of the starters that gets a lot of work while some of the others sit.
Well, I mean, yeah, this is such a growth year for him. So, I mean, you can imagine that. I think you're right. I mean, because I think Goff will sit, St. Brown will sit. So, hey, that's time to shine for him. So, yeah, definitely going to be keeping an eye on. He's the guy. I think he's the guy. Is he the guy that you guys asked the most questions about of Dan Campbell? This, OTAs and minicamp.
Yeah, Jameson is always, everyone always wants to know what's going on with him because he's the speed is unbelievable. The athleticism is there. And if they can unlock the potential of what he can be, then, I mean, we're talking about a guy that could potentially be like the next Tyreek Hill, just a speedy guy that's very hard to stop and can make incredible plays. But we'll have to see where that goes.
No, well, let's hope, because we need more good speed receivers, and as long as he only adds, doesn't take away from St. Brown and LaPorta. So as long as he just adds to them. So, one of the great additions last year, and actually just recently, I had to sit down with Matt Harmon on the Yahoo Fantasy podcast where we were trying to find the 2024 version of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And, I put on here Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery, but I mean, isn't the answer really both? I mean, both are going to be around. I mean, is that tandem just going to, kind of like, locked and loaded in their roles?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, they came really, really close to both having 1,000 yards rushing last year. They were about 50 yards short. I think that they definitely look to do that again. I would say that you'll probably see a little bit more of Gibbs than you did last year. Obviously, they sort of took it slow with him in the beginning of the year. I know that upset a lot of fantasy football people. But obviously once he got going, I mean, he was incredible to watch, very special. So I think you'll see him take a lot more reps to begin the season and maybe even kind of be the starter, per se. I think these guys are both 1A, 1B. They're both the starters. They're both going to get plenty of reps. The bringing in Sione Vaki, the rookie out of Utah, who's special teams safety running back type player. Right now, there's a solid chance he could be the running back 3. I think Ben Johnson will love to do some stuff with him. So that could certainly affect both Gibbs and Montgomery's carries, but not to an amount that I would not draft either of these guys. They're going to get their carries and their touches and their time, but they're certainly going to utilize all the weapons they have on this offense.
Could Gibbs' role grow more in the passing game? I believe he had 71 targets last year. Could he get even more this year?
Yeah, I think so. With the wide receiver depth being what it is, and Josh Reynolds being gone, I think they'll definitely look to utilize everybody that they can. I think that's Gibbs and Sione Vaki, as I mentioned before. Montgomery's not much of a pass catcher, but he can do it occasionally. But yeah, I would think that Gibbs is going to be a lot more involved in the pass game.
Yeah, just I'd love to see him, get the ball out in space and just see, kind of like make that speed, just use that speed. Because, man, I remember early in the season, I was writing a rookie report for Yahoo and keeping a really close eye. And I think it was in the game against the Chargers. And you could just tell the difference in speed between Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Montgomery was still fast, but Gibbs was he had a different gear. So he's being drafted. He's being drafted early in the first, second round. Gibbs, I think, is a big, he's in the middle rounds there, kind of like fifth or sixth round. I think he's a bargain right now because I don't see him getting less than 1,000 total yards this season. So anybody else to keep an eye on the offense, or is this pretty much like concentrated on the guys that are really going to be the most fantasy relevant?
Yeah, no, I think that those are going to be the guys. At this point, the question is who's going to be that number 3 receiver, and sometimes you can get a lot of value out of those guys. Like last year, I bring up Josh Reynolds a lot because you could get some fantasy value out of him in a pinch. So we'll see. There's some thought process that Donovan Peoples-Jones can play that same role, and that maybe if you're down the stretch and you need somebody to come in and he's available, which he probably will be, he's somebody that could certainly get some targets, put up some yards, have a good game every now and again. But nobody I would draft super high. I probably wouldn't even draft him. I'd grab him late in free agency or something.
Yeah, well, Wolverines. Yeah, he's got to keep an eye on later. He's that kind of like got that great athlete, and plus he's a Michigan Wolverine, so that always helps for Detroit folks. You mentioned the offensive line. I mean, this is going to be one of the best units again. I mean, just anything else to add other than, gosh, this is a phenomenal group.
That addition of Kevin Zeitler is is huge because that's a Pro Bowl right guard. Jonah, in moments he would be good, but the last year he struggled a lot, and at the end of 2022 he struggled a lot. He dealt with injuries a lot, which caused the Lions to have to shift things around and move Graham Glasgow to different areas. And Frank Ragnow got hurt quite a bit last year, so we'll hope that he's rehabbed well and ready to go. But I mean, they've got Penei Sewell, and I love the way he's a monster.
I love the way they use him.
Yeah, and I think they strengthened up their depth this year too with Colby Sorsdal, who they drafted last year. They tried him at guard. They're going to move him back to tackle. He's much better there. Drafted Christian Mahogany out of Boston College, is really solid guard off the bench. And we'll see what happens. I like their depth. I like their starters a lot more than I did last year. I think this is the best offensive line in the league.
All right. So a quick hit on the other side of the ball. This was one of the best run defenses in the NFL last year. Really fit in with, the Dan Campbell ethos of just being really great in the trenches, playing real, tough guy football. They were beatable in the secondary, but they addressed that in the draft. A lot of times, rookie cornerbacks can have a little bit of a learning curve. Is that going to be the area to really keep an eye on this year? Is against the passing game in that secondary?
Yeah, I mean that was the thing that really held the Lions back last year was just being able to stop the pass. They were actually a lot closer to being a top 10 defense than people may have realized. They were 13th in DVOA and they were 12th in total yards allowed. So I mean, they could have been there if they would have just had a better secondary, which did get better during the end of the year, but it still wasn't good enough. But with Carlton Davis as the new cornerback one, they scored big there in that trade. Terry and Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw, to get both those guys in the draft was, I mean, I don't know how Terry and Arnold gets to 24. 15 straight offensive players.
Yeah.
That's just the most insane thing ever. Like that guy should have been a top 10 pick. So to have him and then Robertson coming off the bench. This is a whole brand new cornerback room. There's only 2 guys returning, and both those guys are more than likely going to be on the practice squad. So they'll move Brian Branch back to safety, and they'll have Kirby Joseph next to him. Ifitu Melifonwu off the bench. I mean, it's a really solid group, and if they can come out and be the group that everybody hopes and they can be, then yeah, this Lions defense is going to be really, really tough.
And that's the thing, because I mean, against the run, I mean, they were up there with San Francisco, and I mean, as one of the best run defenses in the, the thou shall not run against these guys. Yeah. Fantastic group. Aiden Hutchinson was just obviously a monster up front. How is the city, coming off of, going to the NFC Championship game, almost, having that big lead at halftime, and then hosting the NFL draft? How is Detroit handling kind of like Super Bowl expectations, the fan base itself?
I think everybody at this point thinks that that's the expectation this year is to go win it, is to go win the Super Bowl. And I don't think anybody, obviously there's some tempered expectations because there's stuff from your past that's really hard to get rid of, that right. this team's been so bad for so long, and now they're suddenly, every time you get on the internet, you're seeing someone from one of the national outlets saying that this is a Super Bowl contender, or Pro Football Focus the other day said they had the best roster in the league. It's like it's weird, it's weird to see it, but they've built this team very, very well. Brad Holmes has been a very good drafter, really good talent evaluator when it comes to free agency. Dan Campbell is, just an unbelievable leader, and he's let these guys know right away, even right after the San Francisco loss. The first thing he said in the locker room was, that might have been our only shot. It's going to be twice as hard for us to get back here. So right away, he's instilled this idea that we can't just run it back. We have to be twice as good as we were last year because everybody's coming for us now. So to have that mind frame and that mindset, and to continue to build the way that they've built, and to improve so much in some defensive areas, it's hard for me to say that they're not going to the Super Bowl. I really believe that they can do that and they can win it.
Yeah, and it's I mean, gosh, so close last year. Yeah, just it's a matter of health. I mean, I think they have the right coach to give them the mindset to take them there. This is going to be fun, and obviously this is going to be fun watching that offense do well this year. So, amigo, this is awesome. This is awesome. I always love to close out with Mexican food. So, anything really tickling your fancy? Because I know you get the best of the best, el mejor del mundo.
Queso birria, really been enjoying that lately. With the dip that you dip it in, and oh man, that is delicious stuff. But if I give a shout out to somebody, to a restaurant,
go for it.
I don't know how many listeners you have that are in the Michigan area, but Mezcla restaurant in downtown Holland is the best burrito I've ever had in my entire life, and I've eaten burritos all over this great country of ours, and this, like, it's just incredible. I wish that you could try it, man. I really do. It's so good.
Oh man. Hey, you know what? I've heard nothing but great things about the food scene in the greater Detroit area. So it's just, oh man. Okay. Well, I do need to at some point get out to the Tigers game during the summer before football season takes over. So one of these years it's got to happen. So I'm gonna hit you up on that one. So, mi amigo, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hey, I know you're not going to sleep. I know the NFL is going quiet for these next 5-6 weeks, but I know you're not. What do you got coming up to pump?
Well, you can find all my work at A to Z Sports / Detroit. We've got about 4 weeks until camp, so I'll be putting up a lot of thoughts on what could be happening there. Sorry, my dog is crying all of a sudden. On what could be happening. Positive.
We're a dog positive podcast.
Yeah. And we have a historical basketball podcast called Bad Boys and Beyond, in which we discuss not just Pistons history, but NBA history, And we are loving doing that. And you can catch that on YouTube or Spotify, or you can watch from my Twitter. We broadcast live every Wednesday at 5:30. And if you want to watch some basketball or learn some stuff, check on it. I definitely learn something new every week.
Well, I checked out on basketball when the Celtics made it to the NBA Finals and then won. So,
yeah.
So I'm not acknowledging the NBA right now.
No, I'm with
the Laker
I'm
fan in
me.
Oh, mi amigo, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome. Make sure to follow him at A_Payton on Twitter. So keep an eye on him. And familia, muchas gracias for joining us. Also, make sure you're following us on YouTube, Familia FFB on YouTube. Keep getting these shows and the great insight that we're getting from NFL insiders. I'm Jorge Martin. You can find me at Jorge Martin 17 on Twitter. Find my content at Yahoo, RotoWire, Fantasy Pros, all over the place. Muchas gracias, everybody. Otra vez, muchas gracias, Mike. And remember, everybody, todos somos familia. Salud.